And we are rolling. Hey guys, it's your buddy Jake Dominguez back with another anime review. That's right, today I'm going to review an anime show. Now, if you've been following my channel for the last little while, you know, come on, Jake, you review movies, right? Well, I want to add it up just a little bit and start reviewing anime on my channel as well. A little while ago, I posted my review for the film Your Name. It's been very popular, surprisingly popular. I'm blown away by how many views it has and the positive response it's gotten from fans of the film, which is beyond exciting for me. I can't even put into words how grateful I am for that. And that's inspired me to expand my horizons, if you will, and review anime, because I've loved anime, and during the last under a year or so, I've started to really get into anime. If you saw my Your Name review, I've talked about that a little bit in there, but I'm super excited today to talk about a show that I watched recently called Erased. Erased is what it's called here in America, that is. That's the English title. The actual title is, and I wrote it down right here, I'm going to try my hardest, Boku dake ga Inai Machi. I really, really, really tried hard with that one. How did I do? Did I do okay? Did it come out all right? Hopefully it's all right. I tried my best. I tried my very best with that one. Hopefully it turned out okay. I have a bit more to say about that title and the title change at the end of this review. But for now, let's just call the anime Erased. This is made by A1 Pictures. It's directed by Tomohiko Ito? Tomohiko Ito, I think it is. Excuse me if I'm getting these names wrong. The writer is credited as Taku Kishimoto, and of course it's based on the very popular manga. This show, I think, premiered last year. I've heard tons of things about it, tons of recommendations from people, and I finally watched it. In fact, I pretty much binged it within like 2 or 3 days. So this is an addicting show, as you can already tell, and I'm super excited to talk about it. Let's talk about the basic plot. Now, in order to talk about the plot of this show, I'm going to basically spoil the basic synopsis of episode 1. I'm not going to give any big spoilers, but this is what more or less happens in the first episode. Some little details of that is. So here's the basic 20-second, 30-second synopsis of Erase. So the main character in this show is Satoru is it Fujinuma? Something like that, I think it is. But Satoru. And he is like a 20-something-year-old guy. And he's a manga artist. A failing manga artist, that is. And he's not the most loving, friendly guy in the entire world. In fact, he's kind of selfish. He's kind of aimless. He has no real emotional connection with people, even with his own mother. And he's kind of just living life. But he has a certain ability. He has this kind of superpower, if you will, called revival, is what he calls it. And basically what revival is that you basically go back in time like 20, 30 seconds maybe, right after you had something happen in order to stop something from happening. Does that make sense? So let's say if I had revival and there was a car crash about to happen, revival would kind of like quickly make me go back in time to notice something happening before that car crash would happen. Like I would go to the car and say, hey, look where you're going. Hey, stop. And the car crash would be avoided. That's a really bad explanation, but basically that's what revival is. It's basically a time travel thing, and so Satoru uses it. He uses revival, and well, it's not even like he can turn it on or off. It just happens without warning, and he uses it. He tries to help whatever situation he goes back in time for, but he views it as a hassle. He doesn't like it. He really just views it as a hassle for him. And he's just as a very aimless guy. But then one day, through a bunch of weird circumstances, he does a super revival. He basically goes back in time to when he was a child. He still has his adult mind, but he goes back and he's basically as a child again. And he realizes that he's gone back in time to figure out the identity of this killer that kidnapped and murdered some children when he was that young. And basically, he has to go through all of this again in order to stop this evil murderer, whoever it is, stop his actions throughout all the way in the present day or the future, where he is a full-grown adult. Man, this is a twisty show, as you can tell. This is a very complicated plot to explain, but basically that is the plot of Erased. And I gotta say, This is an extremely effective show. This is an intense, suspenseful show. I pretty much binge watched all 12 episodes, I think it is, over the course of 3 days. I just couldn't stop watching. I needed to know what would happen next. It's extremely intense, very unpredictable for the most part, and I had no idea where I was going to go. And I also loved these characters. There is a lot of great characters in this show. Satoru is a pretty great hero. As you can tell from the beginning of the show, he's not the most, what we would imagine a hero would be. He's kind of a slacker. I could definitely relate to him myself. But to see his character development in the show is extremely successful, and I loved that. The other great characters include his mother. Okay, Satoru's mom in this show is the greatest mom, like, ever. She's awesome. I think her name was Sachiko or something like that. But the mom in this show is so loving, and I fell in love with her the entire show. She is such a great character. She's always there helping her son. It's awesome. It's extremely well done. And there's all sorts of other great characters as well in the show. But there's one character that I fell in love with so much that is really the heart of the show. You could say she's the MacGuffin of the show, if we're going to paraphrase Alfred Hitchcock's use of that word. And that is a character named Kaio. Kaio Minazuki, I believe her name is in the show. Again, I'm hoping I'm saying this right. The main plot of Erased is that once Satoru goes back in time, he meets up with this girl named Kaio. He barely knew her, but without going into too much detail, she was the first to be kidnapped and murdered by this murderer, whoever this person is. And he realizes that if I help this girl, I can hopefully change the rest of the timeline in order to find out who this killer is and stop him from doing all these other evil acts in the future. And Kaio is such an incredible character. And that's when the show Erased is strongest. When it's focused on our main character in Kaio, that's when the show gets its heart, gets its suspense, gets its really powerful emotions out. And she is just such an incredible character. In this show, she is just kind of funny. She's just very laid back. She is quiet. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. And there's something really admirable about that. But it gets really scary when you find out more about this character in the depths of the show. Because the way Kaio is using this show is absolutely heartbreaking. It is devastating. Now, you guys know me. I don't try to go into a lot of spoilers in my reviews. It's kind of harder with a show, although, is it? In a 12-episode show, I try not to get into too many plot points and stuff like that. But for now, I will say this, and a lot of this has to do with Kaio and her storyline, which is the main source of conflict and the main heart and focus of this TV show. A big theme in this show is the theme of physical abuse. And I was nervous about that going in watching this anime. Once I found out that was a big plot point and a big theme of the show, is physical abuse, why it's evil, and, well, that should be a given, right? Of course it's evil, but it really hammers that home in this show and shows how physical abuse not only affects the victim, but everyone around her or him, and the after effects of that all throughout the future. And this show is has one of the best depictions of the consequences and evils of abuse I've ever seen in a movie or a show or a book or anything. When you deal with physical abuse, in this case it's child abuse, basically, you need to really know what you're doing. I've seen so many cases, so many movies, so many shows which tackles this subject and it doesn't work. Period. And in fact, at its worst, it feels exploitative and unnecessary, and you wonder why it was even done that way to begin with. And that's a whole other topic. This is a whole other bag of worms I could tackle for another day, but I can maybe count on my hands the amount of times I've seen a show or whatever it is tackle the theme of abuse, and this is even worse, this is child abuse, and uses it in like a good way. It uses it in a way that's appropriate for the story, in a way that doesn't feel exploitative or wrong, or in a way that doesn't feel like it's just there to pull your heartstrings because, oh no, it's physical abuse, don't you feel bad for this character? Which is kind of terrible if you think about it, considering that happens in real life. Again, this is a big subject for another video, because I can go on and on about this. But for now, I will say Erased has one of the best depictions of it. The use now, how when we see the abuse in this show and the aftermath of this abuse, it is disturbing. It is truly disturbing. It is scary. It is heart wrenching. It's not easy to watch, but it never feels exploitative. It never feels like it's being used to manipulate the audience. It is disturbing, but it's showing just what it is, that it exists for these characters that we love. But it never got to the point where I felt like it was being misused, or I felt really too uncomfortable in the context of the show. I don't mean uncomfortable in the way that, oh my goodness, someone just got beat up. That's terrible. I'm not talking about that as a viewer in the show. I mean just as a person watching a show, watching this very difficult subject and asking, like, is this necessary? Does that make sense? Like, how do you do that? This is a subject matter that you can easily screw up, and most of the times it is screwed up. Erased has one of the best depictions of it. Kaio in this character, the character of Kaio in this show is insanely freaking great. I loved her. I wanted to save her. I was with the main character of the show, Satoru, the whole time. Like, go and save this girl. Go help her out. It is so incredibly powerful, well written, and it was a very emotionally satisfying. There is one episode that has a certain scene. This is like within the last 3 or 4 episodes of the show. That even after 2 weeks of watching the show, I watched the show like 2 weeks ago. There are still times where I think of that scene in this certain episode that happens at the end of the show, and I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. There's times where I'm starting to think about this scene, I just get emotional because it broke my heart that much. And it is done incredibly well. She is such a great character, and when the show is focused on the relationship between these two characters and saving this girl, it works incredibly well. I could just praise it forever, but it works incredibly great. This is really great filmmaking in this show. And as you can tell, this show deals with a lot of mature themes. I mean, it is kind of a murder mystery show, if you will, but it also deals with themes like, basically, we have an adult man in the body of a boy, and he has his memories and everything, but he has to look at his life in the past, and he realizes things, especially regarding Kaio's character, that he didn't notice when he was a child. Because he's seeing it from an adult view. He notices how ungrateful he was for his mother and stuff like that. And he notices things that he didn't notice as a kid. There is a lot of great stuff in this show about youth and growing into an adult and things you don't notice in between either one of those stages of your life. There's themes of, well, wanting to be erased in general, about life and how there's pain in life and how do you get through life in general when there's so many terrible things that happen and there's things we don't necessarily understand. That with themes about loyalty and friendship, even depression and abuse, like I just mentioned, made this a very powerful show. There's also a lot of great use of memory and what we define as memory. And this is a show that they would only be brave enough to really make in Japan. I mean, the idea of a kid of an adult mind, basically, and he's going back in time, anyone else would be like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. That's creepy. But it never feels creepy in this show. It's handled extremely well, and I loved it. This show is one of the most unique murder mysteries I've ever seen. As you can tell by the plot, it's crazy. It's twisty and original, and I loved it. It was handled incredibly well. I'm a big time travel fan in general. I love a good time travel story, so if you can pull that off in a way that I've never seen it really pulled off before, then you get my thumbs up. You get my kudos. I'm a fan. And this show does it incredibly well. There's some great storytelling and filmmaking in this show. It is extremely well done. In terms of flaws about Erased, well, I'm almost tempted to make a whole nother video about this. And in fact, I will. But I'm jumping ahead. Probably the biggest problem I have with Erased is the identity of the killer itself. Now, at the end of every murder mystery, you want to find out who did it, right? When we play a game of Clue, the board game, isn't that the whole point of that board game? The identity of the killer isn't as unpredictable as it should be. In fact, I kind of figured it out pretty early on, to be honest. Like, I wasn't 100% sure, but I'm like, yeah, it's probably that character. I have a feeling it's that character. And in my case, sure enough, it was that character. And reading online and reading other people's responses to the show, I'm not the first person to really have that response to it. And that's too bad. I think they could have done that just a little bit better. But the good news is that unlike the average crime show or Scooby-Doo episode or anything like that, where the only point is to find the identity of the killer and that's it, the end. This is more about the effects of these murders and this and the abuse, etc., etc. It's not about the identity of the killer as much as everything around it. So in a way, it didn't bother me that much. That didn't really affect my viewing of the show. I'm sure there will be people who will be upset by that, but the story around it is more the point of the show, so it didn't bother me that much. Now, there is a huge controversy about this show about the ending. Now, I sat down and watched the show knowing nothing really about it in terms of the response for it. I know it was extremely popular and that sort of thing, but I sat down and watched it knowing really nothing. And I was surprised finding out the response to the ending of this show. Because a lot of people watched it, with every new episode that came out, as opposed to binge watching it when it's done like I did. And it was interesting going online and finding some of my favorite anime critics and etc. really criticizing the ending. There is a big chunk of people who are really disappointed by the ending of Erased. And that is a whole new topic that I can go on and on about. And to be honest, one day I might make a video about the Erased ending and why people responded to it the way they did, as opposed to all sorts. It's a huge subject, and one day when I have better equipment, editing, and stuff like that, I might just do that, because that is a huge subject that I can tackle forever and ever in this video. But for now, I'll just say I found the ending satisfying. I was pleased with where it went. For me, it felt like thematically the ending that all those past episodes were building up to is now the ending of the show. I mean, the exact ending, the climax. Is it the most mind-blowingly brilliant ending ever? I mean, I guess not, but I felt satisfied with it. And again, no spoilers, but the last 2 or 3 episodes, in fact, if memory serves me right, I think it is literally the last 2 episodes of this show, goes in a direction that I never would have guessed it would go in. And I loved it. I thought it was extremely smart and extremely clever. And I felt stupid I didn't think about it all the way earlier in the show that that's what they would do. But I loved that. I thought that was incredibly well done. It was really powerful, too. Again, I think I'll visit this in the future, but for now, the ending felt satisfying to me. I felt pleased with where the characters went, and that is a subject for another day. But for now, I felt satisfied with it, as opposed to other people. Boy, I have a lot to say about that, but I won't go into that now. But in the end, Erased is a really powerful, emotionally moving show. It's one of the most incredibly creative and original kind of murder mysteries I've ever seen. Really original. And I loved the basic moral of the story. The moral of Erased is basically to believe in yourself and to believe in others around you. And it has a lot of themes about sacrifice and sacrificing for others, and I found that really touching. Now, I mentioned earlier about the title change for Erased. In America, for whatever reason, Aniplex, is that who did this, I think? Changed the title to Erased. I don't know why. I mean, obviously, changing titles from Japanese to English is very normal. But the original title for this show in Japanese, translated, I'm not going to try to pronounce it again, is The Town Without Me, or The Town Where I Alone Am Not Here. Basically, one of those 2 variations around that. And if you've seen the show, The Town Without Me is a much, I don't want to say better title, but you can absolutely tell, like, oh, that makes sense. I could go into more detail about that, but I can't because of spoilers. But based on events on the show, The Town Without Me is a perfect title. I'm not sure why that got changed to Erased. Maybe they just thought Erased sounded better, and it's a cool title. It definitely does the job, and in the end, it's a title. It's not really, we can argue about translation stuff all day. But that, to me, is really the heart of the show, is that original title that is said in the show. The idea of A Town Without Me, and what a big... Isn't it terrible to think about what it would be like if you weren't in the world, if you just disappeared? What is the impact of that? And that is explored really extremely well in this show. It's kind of the plot of It's a Wonderful Life, now I think about it, which is interesting. Very different things. But I found that very moving watching the show, because I know for me, I can relate to Satoru in the show, beginning of this show. There are times in my life where I've been a slacker and have not trusted and loved others around me. And watching him how to use that, especially to save this little girl Kaio, was extremely emotionally fulfilling. And I really could not recommend this show enough. I found it extremely well done, and I'm going to give it an A. That's right, an A. A solid A. That is my grading for this show. Definitely go check it out. I watched it on Crunchyroll. It's around. I know you can buy it on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever it is. But I would definitely recommend checking it out. I think it's extremely well done, and I'm glad that I watched it. Well, guys, there it is. My first anime review. What did you guys think? Now, this is my first time doing this. Usually I'm reviewing movies, so I'm a little iffy on this, especially when talking about the plot and certain character details and all that. But I really hope you enjoy it. I'm really excited to keep doing more of these in the future. If you like this, please go ahead and comment down below. What do you guys think of me reviewing more anime in the future? Because I'm going to be doing that as well as movie reviews and TV reviews and blah, blah, blah in the future. And I'm really excited about that. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. It means the world to me. Thank you for being subscribed to my channel and all of that. Really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment down below like I asked earlier. And never, ever forget, I am your friend. I am your friend. I'm always going to be there for you. Thank you for being my friends. You guys are awesome. I will see you next time.